Hey guys, welcome back to Sparkman Homestead. We are making those Tex-Mex meatballs tonight for supper. These are the meatballs that we made together earlier, and I just put them in a package and vacuum sealed them. There is 12 in a package. That's how I kind of like to group them because that's usually the amount that we eat. So all as I'm going to do is I am going to put these on a cookie sheet and I'm going to put them in the oven at 425. And once the oven is preheated, we will throw them in for about 20 to 25 minutes. I usually check the doneness. I just like cut it open and see if it's cooked inside or not. So yeah, we will wait for the oven to preheat and then we will get them put in. So we are just getting the meatballs on the cookie sheet. This is the other reason why I do 12 meatballs at a time, because they fit perfect on this sheet. We can't really start the actual Tex-Mex meatballs until those are done. So while they are cooking, I am going to shred up the cheese, and I'm actually going to get that sourdough bread started as well. I actually just have to refill up my jars. Oh, that broke. Oh no. I keep a lot of my stuff in bulk storage. I keep them in 5-gallon buckets, and then I just use these gamma lids that I got from Azure. I just use those. I put oxygen absorbers in it to help keep it fresh. And then whenever my container that I keep in the kitchen gets low, I just go into my storage and just grab the 5-gallon bucket, and then I just fill these up. This one's almost empty. That's why I ordered that. That's why I ordered that other bag of flour. I always like to have at least 25 pounds of flour on hand because I make everything from scratch. So I am making bread from scratch. I'm using flour a lot. So I just want to make sure that I always have some in storage. Okay, let me go and put this away, and then I will come back and we will get this sourdough bread started. Bring you guys down here so you can see. So I have a fairly large bowl on the scale, and I actually need to get it into grams. Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to tear it out so it's 0. So I am just going to add 350 grams of filtered water, and that is over 350 grams. Water's kind of moving around in there, so it's not really getting an accurate reading. Okay, 350 grams. Now I am going to take my sourdough starter. Now this had come all the way up earlier, and now it is starting to go down. So I want to use it now that it is going down because we really like a more sour tasting bread. So I tend to wait until it rises and then starts to fall. It's still, you'll see when I put it in the water, it is still very, very active. So I am just going to tear this to 0 again. And I am going to add 50 grams of starter. Now it's okay if you go over 50 grams. I'm really not as, I try to stay to the recipe, but I'm really kind of, because I've made this a couple of times. So that's 57, 58. It's going back and forth. My oven is actually preheated, so I'm just going to quickly throw these meatballs, not throw, I'm going to place them because if I threw them, that would make a mess. Okay, set the timer for 25 minutes. Okay, so I want to show you guys, I don't know if you can see See if I can bring the bowl closer. Can you see how it is floating? It's just floating in the water. That's a very active starter. So what I'm gonna do now, just gonna give it a quick little whisk. This starter, I'm gonna have to refeed this because it's starting to go down. So we need to add, I'm gonna tare it again. So we have 0 reading on the scale, and we need to add 9 grams of salt. This is just Redmond's salt. It's amazing salt. That's 11 grams, so this might be a little, no, 10 grams. It might be a little salty. That's fine. Okay, and then we're gonna tare it again. So we have 0 on the scale. And now we are gonna add 500 grams of flour, and we are going to take the oxygen absorbers out because those would not taste good. We're getting close, so I'm just kind of, yeah, right, 500 right on the notch. Because my water was kind of over, I'm just gonna add a little bit more flour and just see what the dough looks like. Okay, we're gonna take it off of the scale. I'm gonna leave this out because I'm gonna need this to feed my starter in a minute. So we're just gonna take the whisk and we are just going to stir it all. Now we want to have it looking like a really rough dough. So I use the whisk for the first to get it kind of incorporated, and then I just use my hands. My hands are clean, so don't worry. I am very, very anal about making sure I have clean hands. Okay, so we're just gonna take it, and I'm just gonna try to incorporate, to show you, there's some flour on the bottom here, but I can tell by the feel of the dough that it is wet, so it's just gonna absorb that flour. So I'm gonna try to get it all mixed in. And you want a sticky bread. This is how I make it. I have watched other people make them on YouTube, and everybody seems to make their bread a little bit differently. So this is what I have found works extremely well for me. So I am just going to get it all incorporated. So that's all incorporated now. You see how it's sticking to my hands? I like that when it does that because that shows me that it's good, moist dough. Okay, I'm gonna wash my hands. Now that flour that I'm using is considered an all-purpose flour, but it's a high gluten all-purpose flour, so it has done very well in the sourdough. Now I am going to take a wet tea towel and I am just going to put it over top of the bowl and leave it for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do its first shaping. Again, this is kind of not really me teaching you how to make sourdough. This is just me kind of trying to get the loaf done while I'm making supper, while I'm waiting for those meatballs to cook. So I'm going to come back in 45 minutes and I'm just going to shape, like give it a quick roll and shape it. And what I'm going to do right now is just quickly feed my starter. I need to grab some tomatoes for the recipe. This is one of my pantries, my canning pantry. I am going to do a tour on this very soon. It's on my to-do list. But the recipe calls for a 15-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. I don't preserve crushed tomatoes. I just do diced tomatoes and tomato sauce. So what I will do is I will take a jar of, I need to look at my dates here. I will take a jar of diced tomatoes, this is a 15-ounce can, and I will just kind of crush these a bit because these are, I mean, they're pretty crushed, but yeah, I will just kind of give them a quick crush when I put them into the pan. Hope that wasn't too close for you guys, but yeah, definitely going to do a tour of this. Oh, and I wanted to grab, let's see if this can will fit my pocket. It does. I wanted to grab a thing of sweet corn to have for supper also. While those meatballs are finishing, they have about 5 more minutes to go. We are going to get started on the first step. It says to add onion to a skillet and cook. Now, Stephen does not like onions, so I don't really cook with them. If I do, I cut them extremely big pieces so that he can pick them out. But one thing that I have found that I can do is I actually dehydrate onions and then I put them into a powder and he will eat that. So onion powder is my best friend in everything. I am using a recipe. I can type it into the description below the video. I don't remember where I got it from, so unfortunately I can't link it. Okay, so because we're omitting the onions, oh, that's our meatballs. Because we are omitting the onions, we are going to stir in the crushed tomatoes, but remember, like I said, I don't have crushed tomatoes, so we are using diced tomatoes, which I always use for this recipe, and they turn out perfect. So we are just going to put it on about 6, just to kind of get it hot a little bit. We are going to add the tomatoes to the pan. And this is where I said I just kind of crush them a bit. I take the back of my spoon. Now, you don't have to do this if you are actually using crushed tomatoes, but because I am using diced tomatoes, this is my little hack that I do. Just to kind of, and we don't mind them chunky, so it doesn't bother us if it does end up having chunks of tomatoes in it, because we both like tomatoes, so it's fine. And they do soften as they cook. So at this point, I am now going to add my onion, and because it is dried, a little bit goes a long way, so that should be good for that. So I'm just going to stir that in, get it all incorporated. And I am actually going to take these meatballs out of the oven. Remember I said they actually need, I would say maybe, I'm going to say 5 more minutes, and then I'll check them again at 5. Those are not done to my liking. They are pretty big meatballs, so they do take a little bit of time to cook. Okay, so we are going to actually turn this up a little bit more than that. And we are going to add, this recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of chopped chipotle and adobo sauce. So that is this right here. So because I never use a full can of these in a recipe, this is just way too much. I don't know what recipe calls for a full can of this. This is not packaged very well, in my opinion. So what I do when I'm using these and when I have leftovers, I actually just put them in a little container like this and throw them in the freezer, and then it's perfect. It saves money because I'm not buying these big cans and wasting half of them. So I have it right here. We're starting to boil now, so now we'll go to 4. So I am going to, it says chipotle and adobo. Okay, so I am going to add 2 chilies into that, and then just some of the sauce. 2 chilies is definitely going to be hot because I don't mind spice, but I don't like it. So I still have another chili in here, so I'm actually just gonna throw this back in the freezer. the sauce is now boiling. It says to bring it to a boil, so I have it to a boil now, and the meatballs are done. So what I'm going to do is just take the meatballs and then put them into this pan with the boiling sauce. This recipe does say to make your own meatballs according to this recipe, and it has jalapeños in it and it has cumin in it. Now, as you remember when we made these meatballs, I did not put jalapeños and I did not put cumin in them. So I think what I'm gonna do, because it is missing that flavor, now I don't want to spice it up too much. I do have pickled jalapeños here, but because I did put such big, huge chilies in there, I think I'm gonna omit the jalapeños, but I am definitely gonna sprinkle some cumin on this. So if you make the meatballs according to this recipe, then you wouldn't have to do this. And just give it a little bit of a stir in there. And then if we really do want to add meatballs after the fact, or jalapeños after the fact, then we can just put them on top of it when we are plating it up over top of the rice. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to turn it down because it is at a low, and it says to cover and simmer until the meatballs are cooked through. I already know these meatballs are cooked through, but I do want them to absorb this flavor. So I am just going to cover it with the lid and let it cook on low for about 10 minutes. And then we will come back, and the next step is to top it with cheese. There is also cheese in these meatballs that the recipe calls for, and again, when we made these, we did not put cheese in it, so I might put just a little extra cheese. So these are done now. I am just going to reheat the rice up. I had made this yesterday, so I am going to reheat the rice up, and then I am also going to heat up some of this corn that I canned in July. It's fresh corn from our garden. I'm going to do the first stretch and fold while that rice is cooking, and I hope you can hear me. Just pull, and I'm just going to do this really quickly. Again, I don't know if this is the exact right way to do it, but this is how I have been doing it, and my loaves turn out perfect. So then that's it. I just leave it, come back in another hour and do the exact same thing. I am going to do this 4 times tonight, and then after the 4th time, I just cover it up like that and I leave it for all night. And then I am hoping that I'll be able to come back and show you guys how I finish making the bread in the morning. My rice is done. Okay, so I have the rice out of the microwave now. I do have a video on how I made this rice, and if I can figure it out, I will link it somewhere on here. Okay, and my corn is all heated up also. So these are all done. All we're going to do now is we're just going to give them a quick stir. That sauce thickens up pretty quick. We're going to give it a quick stir, and we're going to add on approximately 1 cup of cheese. Now, I don't measure cheese. I just say that this looks to be about 1 cup. So we'll just dump that on that. We're going to turn the heat off, and we're going to put the lid back on, and we're just going to let that cheese melt for a minute. This is how it turned out. These are our meatballs right there. They look delicious. And that is our rice, and then we have our fresh corn, and then I put olives out for Steven because he likes those on everything, and then just a little sour cream if we want to put a dollop on top. I may actually get out some hot sauce because that might not be hot enough for Steven. He tends to eat things a little bit more spicy than me. So I hope you guys enjoyed that recipe. I am going to try to come back tomorrow morning and film the rest of that sourdough bread. So I guess I am gonna go and eat and enjoy this food. I hope you have a good night, and I'll see you in the morning. It is the next morning, so I'm just checking my bread. We had a fairly cold night last night, and this bread did not rise very much. When I come down in the morning, usually this bread is almost up to the top, so it definitely did not rise as much as I would have wanted it to. This time of year I kind of had the shift now, and I need to start leaving our thermostat on. Usually our house is around 76, but I guess last night it dropped down. So it did not rise as much as I'd like it to, and it probably will affect the overall bread, but that's okay. What I'm doing is I am putting some white rice flour, just putting a little bit on the countertop here, and I am just going to, yeah, it did not rise at all. That's okay. All of the dough out of the bowl. I have a Benton, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's just kind of like a sourdough bowl, I call it, a rising bowl. So I'm just gonna sprinkle some of this white rice flour in the bowl. I'm just kind of get it to cover in all the cracks. I don't wash this bowl after I use it. This bowl is just strictly for rising dough in. So there's no need to wash it because the dough does not stick to the bowl because there's enough flour in it. So I'm just gonna get that done. Just fold this up. I just wanna really clarify. This is kind of how I do it. I have seen people do it. I guess you guys can't really see from there. Hopefully you can see now. I have seen everybody kind of do it their own way. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just going to try to like tighten the loaf up, I think it's called. I really don't know the official names for things. I just had to do them. I'm just working my hands. So you can see here that there are actually some air bubbles in there, which is perfect. I don't really want to ruin that in the dough. I'm just trying to tighten it and shape it a little bit. Okay, that's good. I don't want to overwork it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the dough and I am going to flip it on its side. See how this didn't really get... I just do this with it. Just kind of squish it like that. And then I am going to cover it up again. I am going to leave it covered while I get my pan preheated. So I have my oven preset at 450. What I use to make sourdough is a cast iron, I think the actual word for it is a chicken fryer. So I just put the lid on. I am going to put it into the oven for 30 minutes with the lid on. What I'm trying to do is get this pot nice and hot and get kind of some steam built up in it so that it helps with the rise of my sourdough. So I'm going to put this in the oven. I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I'm going to come back, pull that out of the oven, and then I'm going to get my bread put on some parchment paper. I'm going to score it and get it back in the oven. Our timer just went off on the oven, so that cast iron Dutch oven is ready to come out. All I'm doing is I'm taking that white rice flour. I'm just sprinkling a little bit on the bottom of this. I just don't want the bread to stick. I just don't want the bread to stick to the parchment. So now I am going to take it out of here and I am going to kind of lightly place it on here. I don't really want to wreck the actual loaf. I'm just going to kind of rub that extra rice flour into it. Now I'm going to take a razor blade. This comes with a little case. I just got it on Amazon. And I'm going to score the bread. So you can kind of do whatever you like here. I like to just kind of go down the middle, and I like to go, I like to make a cross, and then I like to kind of go in and do other little designs on it. It is completely up to you how you want to do it. Pretty much what we're doing here is we're just allowing the bread to be able to expand, like rise. All right, I'm gonna get that out of the oven. It is very, very, very hot. Okay, and then we're gonna take the bread and we're just gonna plop it in there. I kind of make sure that there's not any big folds in the parchment because that will end up being a fold in the bread. So you are going to cover it up, make sure it's nice and tightly sealed, and you are going to put it back into the oven for 30 minutes. Oven timer just went off. So what we're gonna do is we are going to take the lid off of this. And we are going to close the oven, and we are going to set the timer now for 20 minutes. 20 minutes is up. So we are going to take it out of the oven. And we are just going to take the actual bread out of the cast iron. And we are going to put it back into the oven for 10 more minutes. Still in the parchment paper. Okay, 10 minutes is up now. Let's get it out of the oven. Turn the oven off. Okay, here it is. Take off this parchment paper. And voila, there it is. I hope you enjoyed this video. Every kitchen is different. Everybody is going to do their thing a different way. Just because what I did today works for me, it may not work for you. It takes lots of practice to kind of get to that point. I also have a very active starter. I have had that starter for about a year now. I started it from scratch, so it is used to my kitchen. It is used to the yeast that is in my environment. So definitely having a very well-established sourdough starter helps get those results. But don't give up. It has taken me, I don't know, hundreds of loaves probably to get to where I am right now. So the only thing I can really suggest is just not to give up and just keep trying, and just do what works for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to see more, subscribe to the channel and it will notify you when I put new videos up. Again, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day or night whenever you're watching this. Bye guys, see you on the next video.